Good morning, bonjour. Je suis Charlie Angus, député de Timmins Bay James. Wache, Kwekwe, bonjour. Glad to be here on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I'm going to make a few remarks this morning on some of the issues that have come forward lately. Follow up on the ethics investigation into Mr. MacNaughton and Palantir last week. As well, discussions on what we're learning now from the international investigation into money laundering and the role that Canada plays. Il y avait une enquête internationale sur le problème de blanchiment d'argent et c'est clair, le Canada est une juridiction facile pour aider les cachements d'argent sale. Ce n'est pas acceptable. Last week, the Ethics Commissioner found Mr. David MacNaughton, former Ambassador to the United States, and before that, former co-chair of the Justin Trudeau campaign, found him guilty of ignoring his obligations under the Conflict of Interest Act and promoting the interests of a company called Palantir. Now, we know that there's a long history with the Trudeau government in breaking the Conflict of Interest Act, ignoring the lobbying obligations, inviting Liberal friends into the corridors of power. But what made this ruling so dramatic was that the Ethics Commissioner actually named names. He gave us a picture of how easy it is for a company as powerful as Palantir to get inside access to the Trudeau government by hiring a friend of Justin Trudeau. So we learned that Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland was involved, Innovation Minister Navdeep Bains, Justin Trudeau's key advisor, Rick Tice, 3 deputy ministers, 2 chiefs of staff, and the Chief of Defense, General Vance. Hiring David MacNaughton gave Palantir an all-access pass into the Trudeau government. And we know that the Trudeau government just adores big data, the access that they gave to Facebook, that was not registered to lobby, hiring Google staff to work in the government, the deals that they've cut with Amazon. But the question I'm here to ask today is about Palantir. I mean, in what possible universe would Chrystia Freeland think that it was a good idea to open the doors of government in Canada to a company like Palantir? This is a massive data surveillance company run by an extremely right-wing libertarian billionaire, Peter Thiel. This technology, the accusations that the technology of the surveillance company has been used to target migrant workers in the United States. We've seen families broken up, children put in cells. The deportations along the U.S. border have raised horrific issues of human rights abuses, and the question of using Palantir's technology comes up again and again. This is a company that developed surveillance technology in Iraq. It's now selling this technology in the United States under its so-called predictive policing capabilities. So we are having questions of abuses of civil rights, racial profiling, the growing conflicts that we're seeing south of the border between state, police, and racialized communities. And the Trudeau government would invite these guys into their offices? Come on, what gives here? If you look at Palantir, their client list has included the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, Special Operations and Command, and now we learn that, man, everybody who was anybody in the Trudeau government couldn't wait to meet with them. Why? Because David MacNaughton is a close friend of Prime Minister Trudeau. Again and again, we see with this government that if you're a friend of the Prime Minister, you get the all-access pass. And government should not be working this way. This is not how government should work. Instead, it doesn't seem to matter to this government what the company's selling as long as they're friends. And so we have to ask, is the government willing to put a frame on these dealings? First of all, to respect the Lobbying Act. Secondly, to respect the conflict of interest rules that the Prime Minister himself has been found guilty of breaking a number of times. But are we not going to put some kind of moral lens on the kind of companies that are being invited into these meetings with the government? Because Palantir, if you ask the Canadian public and you showed what they did and what they're doing with their technology, this is not the kind of company Canadians want to be associated with. And I'm calling on the Prime Minister, where is the moral lens? Just because they hire good friends of the Trudeau government, they should not be getting this all-access pass. La semaine dernière, M. Dion, le commissaire des affaires éthiques, a trouvé que David MacNaughton était coupable d'avoir enfreint la loi sur les conflits d'intérêts. Il y a beaucoup des enquêtes contre les amis de M. Trudeau maintenant. Mais cette décision était extraordinaire parce qu'il était révélé les connexions massives entre M. MacNaughton et les leaders dans le gouvernement, Mme Freeland, ministre Bains et les autres membres du gouvernement. Je suis inquiète par cette révélation parce que Palantir est une société de surveillance massive avec multiples allégations d'abus de la vie privée et les attaques contre les droits civils des citoyens. Il y a une culture de complicité dans le gouvernement de M. Trudeau, d'aider leurs grands amis pour promouvoir les projets et les intérêts de ses amis. Mais j'étais choqué qu'une entreprise aussi controversée que Palantir a été invitée à ces réunions privées avec le gouvernement. Il y a beaucoup des allégations contre Palantir pour les attaques contre le droit de vie privée, les droits des citoyens et citoyennes aux États-Unis. Ils sont accusés de complicité en ciblant des familles migrantes pour les déportations. C'est clair, le Canada ne devrait pas inviter une entreprise comme Palantir au Canada. Palantir a embauché un ami de Justin Trudeau pour aider les intérêts, mais ce n'est pas acceptable pour le gouvernement d'ignorer leur obligation morale pour défendre les droits du privé des Canadiens. I'm going to give a few comments this morning about the findings of the international investigation that's going on into international money laundering. And clearly, Canada has been accused many times of being a perfect place to get rid of dirty money. We've known through the West the allegations in casinos, through purchasing of real estate. But what was really shocking in the latest revelation is the role the grand banks internationally are playing in terms of not reporting money laundering. Money laundering has a corrosive effect on the economy. And we know that Canada, because there's many problems with our reporting mechanisms for corporations that hide the ability of people with dirty money to invest in Canada, and we need to start actually putting better standards of transparency in order to address the crisis of dirty money. Je n'étais pas surpris d'apprendre que les criminels regardaient, considéraient le Canada comme une juridiction facile pour les blanchiments d'argent. Mais le problème était que les grands banques soient complices dans ces activités. C'est nécessaire pour le gouvernement de M. Trudeau de mettre fin les échappatoires qui aidaient l'exploitation de ces activités et d'aider les bandits en cravate pour cacher les sales argent. Ce n'est pas acceptable. C'est nécessaire pour le gouvernement de travailler avec les NPD pour mettre en place les mesures pour forcer les transparents des grandes entreprises et pour forcer les banques de respecter leur obligation de trouver l'exploitation des blanchiments d'argent et pour exposer ces actions-là. C'est clair, madame et monsieur tout le monde payent leur juste part, payent leurs impôts. Pourquoi les grands riches ignorer leurs obligations? You know, when we're looking at the huge loopholes, for example, the tax havens that allow the super rich to ignore their legal obligations, to allow white-collar crime, to allow criminal organizations to use Canada to money launder. It's not acceptable. Ordinary people pay their taxes. Ordinary people follow the rules. We're just asking that the government ensures that the big corporations and the big banks do the same in terms of accountability. Those are my remarks this morning. I'm more than willing to take questions.
We'll now take questions, starting with questions on the phone. A quick reminder to reporters, one question, one follow-up per reporters. Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions, en commençant par les questions au téléphone. Un petit rappel aux journalistes, une question de suivi seulement. Operator, do we have a first question?
Yes, thank you. Merci. Please press star 1 to ask a question. Veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 pour poser une question. The first question is from Lee Bertume of the Canadian Press. Your line is open. Please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Angus, thank you for talking to us today. I just wanted to follow up, first of all, on the money laundering report. What exactly would you and the NDP like to see the government do to better tackle this issue?
Well, one of the big problems is that there's a lack of accountability in who's making purchases in terms of property, and also corporations are able to protect their they're basically the accountability mechanisms and transparency mechanisms in financial activities is almost non-existent. So I think in terms of dealing with how it's being dealt with in the real estate markets, we would establish a public beneficial ownership registry so that we can actually know who's owning these properties. I think that would really cool the love that the international gangs have for using our real estate. But we also need to make sure that we're really sending a message to the banks and to other financial organizations that if this kind of money is moving through, they have an obligation to report. We know that billions comes through Canada. In fact, Canada was mentioned in the top 10 of jurisdictions for these activities, and we're so notorious that there's actually an expression for it. It's called snow washing. If you want to take your dirty money and get it clean, send it to Canada. So I think the government needs to start showing that they're going to take white-collar crime seriously, something that we haven't really seen in this government up till now.
And on the issue of the findings against Mr. MacNaughton and Palantir, you mentioned a moral frame or an ethical frame of some sort. Can you explain exactly kind of what you would like to see, what the NDP would like to see to prevent these types of incidents in the future?
I think if you look at Palantir, I mean, they've been a super secretive organization, but they're deep ties to the CIA, deep ties to the technologies that were used against citizens in Iraq. This kind of surveillance corporation is very dystopian. I'm really shocked that they were given such ease of access into the corridors of power just because they hired a top liberal. Peter Thiel is no friend of democracy. This company is no friend of civil rights or human rights. There's multiple allegations against them for the abuses that are happening with migrants and the border. I would think that the Trudeau government needs to have a moral frame of who they deal with. I mean, we cannot simply say just because you hire a powerful liberal that you get insider access all the way up to the Deputy Prime Minister's office. Palantir is not the kind of company we want in Canada, and I would have thought that the Trudeau government would have at least said thanks, but no thanks. We really can do a lot better than inviting a company like Palantir into getting access to our data.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. And once again, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. If you have a question, appuyez sur étoile 1 pour poser une question, s'il vous plaît. And for the time being, Christine, we have no more questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This
Merci.
concludes the press conference.